quick little, quick little video, try to make it real quick, but I want to make a quick video, something I've been thinking about through the spirit, on Revelation, the second chapter, Psalms, I believe 106, right? But, you got a lot of people, they out here forgetting the Most High's words, and we wonder why, we don't increase. We wonder why we don't get on fire for the Most High for long periods of time, or why we can't endure certain things, because we forget about the Most High's marvelous works. We forget that, he got us out of a lower state or whatever. He forgot about him, taking us out of Egypt. We forgot about him, parting the Red Sea. We forgot about him, bringing down many, many different nations and doing many miracles like flooding the earth. We forgot about him even on, your life. The things that he's done for you, the miracles he's done in your life. We forget about those things, we start to, fall away from the truth, right? Because when you forget about the Most High's works, you forget about how powerful He is, you know. And now you starting to just think so practical to the point where you just going off now, right? Let me get this precept real quick in Revelation, real quick, chapter 2 and verse number 4. It says, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love." Right? It says, "Nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love." Right? And everybody knows this precept. Everybody knows. When you first came into the truth, it was amazing. Right? You fell in love with Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. You fell in love with magnifying His name. You fell in love with keeping the commandments. You fell in love with knowing that you're an Israelite. Right? But it gets to a point, that when you go on and on and on into the truth, you fight different temptations. You have highs, you have lows, you start to leave your first love. You forget your first love, right? It says, "Remember, therefore, from whence thou art fallen, and repent, and do the first works, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and I will remove thy candlestick out of its place, except thou repent." And the Lord said, if you want your first love back, if you want to keep, your candle lit, you want to stay on fire, keep oil getting poured into your candle, the Lord said you got to repent. You got to do the first works. You got to remain faithful, essentially, right? But that's why our people fall away, is because they don't remain faithful unto death. They don't remain faithful until the kingdom comes. A lot of people they give up because temptation is too hard. They get tired of falling. They get tired of falling. You should always get tired of falling, but they get tired of having to get back up and stay disciplined. So they say, you know what? I don't want to be disciplined. I'm just gonna fall away. Right? Let me get this quick, account real quick. I'm gonna get a quick precept in Ezekiel chapter 22. Right? And this is something you want to, question yourself every single day, right? Every single day, right? This is Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse number 14. It says, "Can thy heart endure, or can thine hands be strong in the days that I shall deal with thee? I, the Lord, have spoken it and will do it." Right? So you got to question yourself and say, hey, can my heart really endure? Right? All this that's going to come up against me, everything that I've already been through, right? Can my heart endure this next tribulation, this next temptation? You got to think back to how the Most High brought us out of Egypt. You got to think back to how, he helped the three holy children get out of the pit of fire. You got to think back to how you got Daniel out of the lion's den. You got to think back to all these marvelous works that you read throughout this Bible. You got to compare it to your life and be like, hey, I could get out of anything, right? Let me go to another quick precept before I go to Psalms 106. All right, let's go to Psalms chapter 40 and verse number 1. Turn this off. All right, this is Psalms 40 and 1. It says, "I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my goings." All right, so you got to go back to these accounts. You got to think. You got to wait patiently on the Lord. You got to understand that temptation, tribulation is all before a time, right? So when you in a miry clay, you in a horrible pit at that moment. You got to wait patiently on the Lord. But you got to remember, hey, the Lord he's not gonna just leave me behind. He's not gonna forget about me. He's gonna test me. As soon as that fire is about to burn me up, and he gonna come and save me up out of there. As soon as that water about to drown me, he gonna pull me up by my head. And he gonna let me breathe. Right? You ever seen somebody get waterboarded? Right? That's what it's like. You almost drowning, and then the Lord pick you right back up. You almost drowning again, and the Lord pick you right back up. Right? That's how it's gonna always be. But if you forget about the Most High's works and getting you, out of a certain, state, then you're gonna fall away. All right. Before I get that precept, let me grab Sirach real quick. Precept in Sirach. Give me 1 second. Right? I think it's Sirach 11. Right? Come on. All right, this is Sirach chapter 11 and verse number 25. It says, "In the day of prosperity there is forgetfulness of affliction. In the day of affliction there is no remembrance of prosperity." Right? So people always forget the Lord when they're having good times. The Lord might have just taken you. You might have not had a job for damn 3 months. You're behind on bills. Your woman or whoever you may be living with, they on your heels about making some money and paying the rent and all of that, right? As soon as you get that job, you forget about the affliction that you went through, and now you're just so focused on getting that money, you start to slack in the work that you do for the Most High. I've been there. I've been in that position. I slacked on the work that I was supposed to do for the Most High because he elevated me into another position. You don't want to do that. As soon as you do that, then that's when everything else start happening. You start waxing completely worse. Start fasting less. You start reading less. You start getting caught up in this life, and you forget about what waxing stronger for the Most High, right? So he said, for it is right in the day of prosperity, there's the forgetfulness of affliction. So you should always remember. So Jake even said in the world, always remember where you came from. Remember how the Lord brought you up. Remember, He could take you right back down to that position. If you don't focus on it, and He's gonna do it, right? This is verse 26. It says, "For an easy thing unto the Lord in the day of death to reward a man according to his ways. The affliction of an hour maketh a man forget pleasure in his end, whose deeds shall be discovered." Right? So you don't know, like I said, you don't want to forget about the works of the Most High. You want to remember your first love. You gotta, remind yourself that, as much as you can, because if you fall into a drought, it's gonna be hard to get out of that drought. You know, I want to grab this precept though, in Psalms 106. Right, yeah, you fall into a drought, it's gonna be hard to get out of that drought. It's hard to get yourself out of a pit by yourself. You're gonna need help. You're gonna need brothers, you're gonna need sisters, you're gonna need people that have actual wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and experience. Imagine if you fell into a pit in real life, you know, and you got a bunch of children with you that don't know how to get you out of there. They don't know how to get a rope to, kind of throw it down and, hook it up to something. You're not gonna get out of that pit. So you're gonna need not only brothers, but the Most High, and you're gonna need your own experience, right, to go through those things, right? And that's why the Most High, does certain things so that you can remember and that you can get the experience that you need to serve Him, right? So let's go to the Book of Psalms, chapter 106, and I'm gonna start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse number 9. I'm gonna start at verse number 8, right? So the point of Psalms 106, right? He's going into the works, and the mercy of the Most High God, right? So let's start at verse number 8. It says, "Nevertheless, He saved them for His name's sake, that He might make His mighty power to be known. He rebuked the Red Sea also, and it was dried up. So He led them through the depths as through the wilderness, and He saved them from the hand of him that hated them, and redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. And the waters covered their enemies; there was not one of them left." Right. So that's the Most High's works right there, getting them out of Egypt, destroying the enemies. Right. You know, rebuking the Red Sea and making it split in half. Right. Those are crazy works that you see, and you're gonna be like, damn, it's gonna have you faithful in a moment. But soon as you get through that moment, you get through all the good times and you see all that, and now the tribulation comes after that. That's when you start to forget the Most High. People, that's what they did in this account. They seen all of this, going on when they come out of Egypt. They seen Pharaoh and Egypt get destroyed. They seen the Red Sea. They seen the water literally fall on the Egyptians. Right? You would think that when you see something like that and you see a chariot, guiding y'all in the wilderness, that you should remain faithful forever and that you will never stop being on fire. That ain't the case with the children of Israel, right? So let's go down. Let's read verse 12. Then believe they his words. They sing his praise. So things all good. They scream, man, the Lord is a man of war in Exodus the 15th chapter. They praising the Lord, saying how he destroyed the Egyptians. Right? It says they soon forget his works. They waited not for his counsel. So soon as they get out of, getting good, getting prosperity from the Most High, they forgot his works. As soon as they got out and they was in the wilderness. They didn't have the food that they wanted. They didn't have the shelter they wanted. They didn't have a lot of water, right? They didn't get to just relax and kick their feet up, right? So they get to complaining, talking about, man, I miss when I was in Egypt. I want to go back and get the onions and the corn, right? And the bread. I want all this and that, right? That's how they was moving, right? It says, but lusted exceedingly in the wilderness and tempted Yahweh in the desert. And he gave them their request, but sent leanness unto their soul. Right? So when they were lusting, they were, forgetting about the Most High. And they saying, hey, I want this and I want that. The Most High gave them what they wanted. Right? He got them out of Egypt. They got into the wilderness. They got what they were complaining and crying about. But the Lord just, he sent a plague with it, right? When you read that up in another translation or whatever, or leanness in the blue letter, that's a plague, right? So he sent destruction with it. He gave them exactly what they wanted with those quails, and they got destroyed when they was eating those quails, right? So you got people out here, they complaining to the Most High, they forget about the Most High's works. They not waiting patiently, during their time of affliction. The Most High may give them a wife. Brothers, they may get a wife, you know. And now that woman, she just damn, she don't give a damn about your mental health. She don't give you nothing, no damn exhortation, no motivation, no affection, no love, right? And now, she committed adultery on you, right? So you got what you wanted, but it came with a plague. That's what happened when you forget the works of the Most High. You start complaining. You start waxing worse in the spirit. You're not serving Him as hard anymore. But you constantly crying out to Him, right? But I'm gonna keep reading. It says, and He gave them their request, but sent leanness unto their soul. They envied Moses also in the camp of Aaron and the saint of the Lord, right? The earth opened and swallowed up Dathan and covered the company of Abiram, right? So, throughout all the works that you've seen, you see men they just say, I don't want to serve the Lord. I don't truly want to serve the Lord. I just want him to give good unto me. But you're supposed to understand that it's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be an equal balance. It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be bad at times. Let me grab this quick precept. I was talking about this with a brother the other day, right? This is Job chapter 13 and number 15, right? It says, though he slay me, yet will I trust in him, but I will maintain mine own ways before him. And the reason that if the Most High is slaying you and he's putting you through hell, the reason that you're going to maintain your ways, your integrity, and continue to serve him is because you remember the works that he's done. You remember that he never left none of his saints, confounded. You've seen that how he's brought everybody up out of a pit. He brought everybody out of the fire and made them 10 times better than what they were before. You read that in the precepts. You see it with the Maccabees. You've seen it with David, right? You've seen it with Abraham. You've seen it with all the mighty men. You know, so that's why you're gonna maintain your ways if the Most High decides to slay you. If the Most High decides to put His hand upon you, you just gotta take it. You can't sit around and be like, "Oh man, it's so damn hard," and you start forgetting about the Most High's words, right? Can't forget about right. Let me get that. Start right chapter 15. And I'm gonna start at verse number 11. Right? It says, "Say not thou, it is through the Lord that I fell away, for thou oughtest not to hate the things that He hates. Say not thou, He hath caused me to err, for He hath no need of a sinful man." Right? And I'm gonna drop down to verse 15. All right, it says, "If thou wilt to keep the commandments and to perform the acceptable faithfulness, right? He hath set fire and water before thee. Stretch forth thy hand unto whither thou wilt." Right? So you can't be looking around talking about, damn, the Most High. The reason I fell away is because of the Most High. The reason I'm not on fire is because the Most High don't want me to be on fire. Yeah, He might be putting you through hell, but you can't be blaming on the Lord that you're going off or that your faith is waxing weaker. You can't do that. The only thing that you could do is focus on going up. You can't focus on none of the other things around you. Or you can't focus on, you know, you just gotta treat it like a new day, bro. You gotta look at the new day. You gotta look at the new opportunity and the mercy, and you gotta focus on going straight forward. All right. Let me get another preset real quick. All right, real quick in Proverbs chapter 4. All right, this is Proverbs chapter 4. I'm gonna start at verse number 26. It says, "Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established." Right? Ponder the path of thy feet, and let all thy ways be established. Meaning you got a strong foundation in the truth. Meaning you're gonna stand 10 toes down for the name of the Lord. You're not gonna just, let a woman, or let a man, who's not, on fire for the Most High, convince you to, go astray. You're not gonna let a job say, "Hey, you can't keep this Sabbath no more." I understand. We was letting you get off on Saturdays, but we need you. You can't just let them, say whatever. You gotta really, because that's the Most High trying. Not saying that you gotta quit your job, just because of stuff like that, but you gotta, let your faith be tested, you know, and you gotta remember the Most High can bring you up out of anything, you know. So let me get another quick precept in James, right? James, uh, right? James, and I'm gonna go back to Revelation in a little bit. So let me get James, right? This is James chapter 1 and verse number 2. It says, "My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, but let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." So, whenever it is, that you're catching hell, instead of forgetting the works of the Most High, forgetting what He did, you know, you gotta be patient. You gotta remember, hey, everybody goes through something. Everybody got issues going on. You're not the only one. And you can't look at yourself as like, damn, I'm an anomaly. I'm the only one going through this situation. It's millions of brothers and sisters going through the same temptations, dealing with the same spirits, going through the same tribulation as you. You just got to remember that the Most High, this ain't nothing new to Him. To bring a man from nothing to make him something, or a woman, you know? And once you get that patience, you get that experience. And once you get the experience, your faith is just going to continue to increase and increase and increase, so that to the point that, America starts to fall, they, most high willing be, in the second wilderness, that when that time comes that you fully built up, and now you willing to serve Yahweh Bashem Yahushai no matter what comes upon you, right? So let me go to the book of Revelation real quick, chapter 2. All right, we left off on verse 5. We're gonna start at verse 6. It says, "But this thou hast, that thou hatest the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate." And if you know about the Nicolaitans, they were basically like modern day Christians. They were like modern day Christians, believing that you could just serve the most, you could just live off faith, and grace. That you didn't need to, do any works. That you didn't have to have any, faith with works, right? That you could just, live off of grace, right? You don't want to be moving like that. As soon as you start moving like that, you start going off, you start waxing worse. And the Most High done with you, right? He said he hates the deeds of the Nicolaitans. Meaning anybody that's contrary to what he's doing, hey, he's not dealing with that, right? It was a precept I was just thinking about, Salakia, right? Let me find that precept. Give me a second. Damn, damn, I forgot it. Con, damn, I forgot the precept I was thinking about. But con, yeah, you don't want to be, letting that happen, man. That happens with a lot of people, man. They deal with certain things and they like, man, I don't know if I could deal with this no more. Bro, I seen it. A brother didn't know how to stop smoking. He couldn't stop coming around smelling like weed, and he was catching hell with his woman. He just said, "Forget that. I'm done with this girl, and I'm gonna smoke all the weed I want." and he just he just bugged out now. He just bugged out. He knows he's an Israelite, but he just bugged out. You know, just losing his mind. You know, damn, catching more hell than he ever caught. You know, so that's the kind of damage the Most High would do to you, man. Right? I'm really trying to think about this precept, but I really can't remember it now. Damn, give me a second. Damn, that's crazy. Right? Con, yeah, con. Right? Give me a second. Damn, I ain't gonna grab that precept no more. But yeah, man, this ain't gonna be too much long of a video. I just wanted to get a few precepts, you know, talking about this, because it was something I was just meditating on. I was out, at work right now. It's just finding your first love. There's a precept in Jeremiah, real quick. Salakia, right? Finding your first love, remembering your first love and getting better, stronger in the spirit. You know, let me find it. There we go. This is Jeremiah. I'll start at 2 and verse number 1. It says, Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Go and cry in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I remember thee, the kindness of thy youth, the love of thine espousals, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness in a land that was not sown. So at one point, the nation of Israel, they was going after the Lord in the wilderness. Right? They was trying to serve the Lord. They was trying to, get closer. Right? But somewhere in between, lust, concupiscence, idolatry, it got, it clouded up their judgment, you know, and then they stopped going after the Lord and instead they went after other gods, and that's how this world is, right? It's a precept in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. It literally says that. It says the God of this world will blind you, essentially, roughly paraphrased. Right? So you may be going that hard for the Most High at one point, but certain things come into your life, certain, tribulations, certain hard times, certain temptations and lust and, hatred and, envy, all these different things come into your life and you stop, you know, chasing after the Most High. You stop chasing after the Most High in the wilderness, which we obviously know is America through the Spirit, right? You stop chasing after the Most High, and you're not loving Him no more. You're not chasing wisdom and trying to make wisdom your wife or your spouse, right? But you get blinded by the God of this world. So let me get this in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, and I'm gonna start at verse number 3. It says, "But if our gospel be hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world have blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Hamashiach, who is the image of God, should shine unto them." Right? So that's what the whole job of spiritual demon Satan is to do, man. It's to blind you. It's to blind you and hide the gospel from you and cause you to, go and worship the beast, you know, right? Let me keep reading. I'm gonna drop down to verse 6. It says, For God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, have shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of Yahweh in the face of Yahweh Shai Hamashiach. Right? I'm gonna drop down to verse. I'm gonna keep reading. It says, But we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of Yahweh and not of us. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Right? So, through all that, you got to understand, hey, I got the Most High with me no matter what. Why you being persecuted? Why you in distress? Why you feel like you alone? You always got the Most High next to your side, to get you through anything, right? He's proved that, right? He shouldn't have to continue to prove it every single day of your life for you to serve him, on fire, serve him fervently. Unfortunately, that be the case. You said what? All right, give me 1 second. It's a lot. But yeah, I ain't gonna make this too much longer. I gotta get ready to go in a little bit. But yeah, don't let the God of this world blind you, man. This is a quick video. Most High willing, brothers and sisters educated through spirit, meditate upon these precepts, and make sure you're having a very fervent week serving the Lord. Whether it's reading, praying, fasting, studying with your household, or whatever the case may be. You know, make sure that you're magnifying the name of the Lord, trying to increase your talents. And casting off these demons. Right. But with that, I'm gonna give all honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh Shem Shai. Shalom.